Message length limit kiwaja say 5 parts, 5,000 words. Akai reply main nahiya sagt. Main B part 1, approximately equals 1,000 words, lik rahahun. Observe part 2 baldin. Main next 1,000 words. Easy pacey or suspense kiss off continue card dunga dot. The moment he refused to say his own name. The courtroom didn't get loud. It got tense. State your full name for the record, Judge Sloan said. Not looking up yet. Pen poised like she'd done this 1,000 times. The man at the defendant's podium smiled slow. Smug like he'd been waiting for this exact line. I'm not here as that entity, he said. I'm here as a living man. And I do not consent to your jurisdiction. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The bailiff's shoulders lifted a fraction. Ready in that quiet way professionals get when a situation is about to become work. Judge Sloan finally looked up, calm, cold, unimpressed. Sir, she said, this isn't a podcast. This is small claims court. Either you identify yourself or you lose by default. The man's smile widened like he thought default was a joke he could outsmart. My name is copyrighted, he announced. And your court is a corporation. I'm here under special appearance only. The plaintiff, a middle-aged tow yard manager with grease under his nails and exhaustion in his eyes, shifted in his seat. You could tell he'd already been through too many phone calls, too many excuses, too many I'll pay you Friday conversations that never ended with money. Judge Sloan turned slightly toward the bailiff. Do we have an ID on file? The bailiff nodded, holding a manila folder. Yes, Your Honor, Kevin Mark Rains. The defendant's jaw tightened for half a beat, so fast most people missed it. But Judge Sloan didn't. Mr. Rains, she said, deliberately using the name. You're here because Mr. Dorsey is suing you for $1,860. Storage and tow fees. A vehicle you abandoned in his yard for 23 days. Kevin leaned forward, offended at being called Kevin. I didn't abandon anything. That yard unlawfully kidnapped my property. Under common law. Stop. Judge Sloan cut in, voice flat. If you say common law one more time, I'm going to start charging you by the syllable. A few people in the gallery let out a short laugh and then immediately shut up. Like they didn't want to become part of the case. Mr. Dorsey stood when Judge Sloan nodded to him. His hands stayed clasped behind his back, like he was trying to keep them from shaking. Your Honor, Mr. Dorsey began, I run Dorsey Towing. We did a private property tow. The apartment manager called because the car was parked in a fire lane. We towed it. We notified the number on the registration. He called, screamed, said he'd handle it later. Then he never came. Storage racks up daily. That's it. Kevin snorted. That's not it. He's a thief. He tried to extort me. Judge Sloan didn't look at Kevin. Mr. Dorsey, do you have the authorization for the tow? Yes. Mr. Dorsey slid a packet forward. The bailiff carried it to the bench. Judge Sloan scanned it quickly. Private property tow authorization, signed by property manager, timestamp, photos. Looks clean? Kevin raised his palm again like he was stopping traffic. I object. That's hearsay. And maritime law. Judge Sloan's pen stopped. She looked up slowly. Maritime law, she repeated, as if tasting something rotten. Sir, was your car parked on the ocean? The gallery stifled another laugh. Kevin's face flushed red, but he charged forward like volume could substitute for logic. This is exactly why I brought my paperwork, Kevin announced, reaching into a folder and slapping down the thick stack of documents covered in stamps, red ink, and phrases like notice of default and affidavit of truth. He pushed them toward the bench with a flourish, like he expected applause. These are my lawful notices, he said. I served him a fee schedule. He now owes me $25,000 for unlawful detainment of my property. Mr. Dorsey blinked, genuinely confused. Fee schedule? Kevin pointed at the top page as if it were scripture. Every time he contacted my phone, that's $500. Every day he held my property, that's $1,000. And he defaulted by not rebutting within 72 hours. Judge Sloan stared at the page for a long beat, then looked up at Kevin. You're telling me? She said slowly. that you think you can send someone a made-up invoice and that becomes law. It's contract, Kevin snapped. He didn't respond. That's acceptance. Judge Sloan's expression didn't change. By that logic, if I mail you a letter saying you owe me $1 million for wasting oxygen today, and you don't reply, I win. Kevin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Judge Sloan leaned forward. This is what we call paper terrorism, Mr. Raines. It's not clever. It's not legal. And the only people impressed by it are the people selling it online. Kevin's nostrils flared. You're biased. I'm experienced, Judge Sloan corrected. There's a difference. She turned back to Mr. Dorsey. Did he ever attempt to retrieve the vehicle? Mr. Dorsey nodded. He came once. He brought a camera. He tried to film my staff. He refused to show his driver's license. He kept saying, I'm traveling, not driving. Then he tried to argue the storage rates were unlawful commerce. Kevin smiled like he'd been quoted correctly. Because it is unlawful. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed. Mr. Dorsey, do you have any recording of that interaction? Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Dorsey said, pulling out his phone. My yard camera and the front desk audio. He threatened to file liens. Kevin's posture shifted just slightly. A tiny stiffness in his shoulders, Judge Sloan noticed. Threaten liens. Kevin's voice went sharper. I didn't threaten. I provided notice. Judge Sloan held up one finger. You will not rebrand intimidation as notice in my courtroom? She nodded to the bailiff. Take his phone. We'll hear it. Kevin took a step forward instinctively, then stopped when the bailiff didn't blink. The bailiff took Mr. Dorsey's phone with the calm of someone who's handled worse. Judge Sloan didn't play anything yet. She didn't even ask for it. Instead, she looked at Kevin like she was measuring him. Mr. Raines, she said. Why didn't you just pay the tow and pick up your vehicle? Kevin leaned in, eyes bright with a kind of arrogance that always comes before a fall. Because paying would mean I accept his authority. And I don't. Judge Sloan nodded once. So this is ideology. It's freedom, Kevin said. I'm not a slave to your system. Judge Sloan's tone stayed calm, but the room felt it tighten. Freedom doesn't mean you get to park in a fire lane and then refuse the consequences. Kevin scoffed. Prove it was a fire lane. Mr. Dorsey's mouth opened, then closed like he couldn't believe the audacity. Judge Sloan flipped through the tow packet again. There's a photo with a sign. Red curb. Fire lane no parking. Kevin smirked again, too confident. Signs don't bind me. Judge Sloan stared at him. That's not how reality works. She reached into her own file and pulled out a single sheet, the kind of sheet that looks harmless until it's read aloud. Kevin's eyes flicked to it. His smirk faltered a fraction. Judge Sloan held it up. Mr. Raines, you claimed you don't recognize this court? Correct, Kevin said quickly, recovering. Judge Sloan's voice went almost polite. Then why did you file a lawsuit in the same courthouse last year? The gallery shifted like one organism. Mr. Dorsey's head snapped up. Even the bailiff's eyebrows lifted slightly. Kevin froze. Judge Sloan didn't smile. She didn't need to dodge. She tapped the page. Case number, your name, your signature. You sued a mechanic for unauthorized repairs and requested damages. Kevin's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Judge Sloan leaned back, pen resting in her fingers like a loaded question. So, she said quietly, when you want money, jurisdiction exists. When you owe money, you become a sovereign. Kevin swallowed hard, and for the first time since he walked in, the courtroom didn't feel like a stage anymore. It felt like a trap he'd built for other people. Snapping shut on him instead. Asterisk Judge Sloan didn't hit play right away. She held Mr. Dorsey's phone in her hand for a second like it was heavier than it should be. Then glanced at Kevin again, calm, patient, almost bored. That kind of patience that makes arrogant people talk too much. Mr. Raines, she said, before I play anything, tell me plainly. When you went to the tow yard, what did you say to his staff? Kevin lifted his chin. I demanded my property back. And when they asked for payment? Judge Sloan asked. I told them I don't engage in unlawful commerce. Kevin shot back. And I provided them a fee schedule. Judge Sloan's eyebrows rose slightly. Provided. Kevin nodded, confident again. Yes, so they understood the cost of violating my rights. Mr. Dorsey's face tightened. He tried to hand my receptionist a stack of papers like a hostage note. Judge Sloane's gaze stayed on Kevin. You hear yourself? Kevin smirked. You hear propaganda? Judge Sloane finally nodded to the bailiff. Play the yard recording. The bailiff connected the phone to the courtroom system. The speaker popped softly, then the audio came through grainy. Outdoor noise, distant engines, a door opening, a voice Mr. Dorsey's receptionist calm but firm. Sir, your total today is $1,860. That's tow plus storage. We take card or cash. Kevin's voice on the recording was instantly recognizable, smooth, performative, like he was speaking for an audience even when no one asked. I'm not paying you, he said. Payment implies consent. I do not consent. The receptionist. Then we can't release the vehicle. Asterisk Kevin. Then you're committing theft. The receptionist. Sir, you were towed from a fire lane. It's legal. Kevin let out a laugh on the audio, and it made the room uncomfortable because it wasn't funny. It was contempt. Legal? He said. Sweetheart, you work for a corporation. Legal doesn't apply to me. I'm traveling. Judge Sloane's mouth tightened up. Sweetheart. A few people in the gallery shifted like they'd smelled something sour. The receptionist tried again. Sir, if you don't pay, the car stays. Kevin's voice lowered like he was delivering a threat wrapped in manners. Okay, he said. Then I'm going to file a lien against your business. And I'm going to file one against you personally because you're participating. The receptionist went quiet for a beat. You can't do that. Kevin's voice turned proud. Watch me. Judge Sloane lifted her hand. Pause, she said. The bailiff paused the audio mid-breath. Silence snapped back into the courtroom. Judge Sloane looked at Kevin the way judges look at people who think intimidation is negotiation. You threatened a lien against a tow yard employee, she said, personally. Kevin's eyes narrowed. It's not a threat. It's a lawful remedy. Judge Sloane leaned back. Lawful remedies are filed with facts, not emotions, not tantrums. Kevin's jaw clenched. She violated my rights? Judge Sloane's tone didn't change. She told you the price to pick up your car. Then she looked to the bailiff. Continue. The audio resumed. Mr. Dorsey's voice entered, now older, tired, controlled. Sir, you need to calm down. You can't threaten my employees. Kevin snapped back immediately, and now you could hear the edge. I can do whatever I want. You have no contract with me. This is theft. I'm going to charge you $1,000 per day for detention of property. Mr. Dorsey, that's not a thing. Kevin, it is when I say it is. And if you touch me or try to remove me, I'll have you arrested. Mr. Dorsey, for what? Kevin, kidnapping. Judge Sloane raised her hand again. Stop. The bailiff paused it. The courtroom sat in stunned quiet. Mr. Dorsey stared forward like he couldn't believe he was hearing it in public now, under lights on record. Tired eyes, but awake. Judge Sloane didn't look at Mr. Dorsey yet. She looked at Kevin. Kidnapping, she repeated, flat. Kevin shrugged like it was normal. They detained my property. Judge Sloane leaned in slightly. Your property is not a child. Kevin's face flushed. It's still, no, Judge Sloane cut in. It's not still, words mean things. That's why you're using big scary ones. Because you think if you say them, people will back up. Kevin opened his mouth, but she didn't let him build another speech. Mr. Raines, Judge Sloane said, you told this court you're a sovereign citizen, but what I'm hearing is a man who thinks he can bully working people out of enforcing normal rules. Kevin's eyes flashed with rage. This is bias. Judge Sloane's gaze stayed steady. This is pattern recognition. She tapped her pen once on the bench. Now your so-called fee schedule. Hand it up. Kevin hesitated. It wasn't a long hesitation, but it was wrong. A man who believes in his paperwork doesn't hesitate to show it. He hesitates when the paper does more than he wants it to. I don't have to provide. He began. Judge Sloane cut him off instantly. Yes, you do, if you want me to consider it. If you refuse, it will be treated as nonsense, which is already my working theory. Kevin's jaw worked. He reached into his folder and pulled out a laminated sheet, laminated, as if he used it often, and slid it onto the bench with a dramatic push. Judge Sloan looked down. It was formatted like a menu. Fees listed per violation. Contacting him, $500. Detaining property, $1,000 day. Speaking his name without permission, $250. Refusal to rebut affidavit, $5,000. The gallery's disbelief turned into low, disgusted murmurs. Judge Sloan didn't react with surprise. She reacted with something closer to irritation, like she'd seen the scam before and hated how predictable it was. "Mr. Raines," she said slowly, "this is ridiculous." Kevin leaned forward. "It's lawful." Judge Sloan's eyes lifted. "It's not lawful, it's laminated." A quick, sharp laugh escaped the gallery. Kevin's face went red again. Judge Sloan held the sheet up. "Where did you get this?" "I created it," Kevin said quickly. Judge Sloan's eyebrows rose. "You created it?" "Yes," he insisted, too fast. "It's my private fee schedule." Judge Sloan's gaze sharpened like she'd found the weak seam. "So you created a document that charges people money if they say your name?" Kevin scoffed. "It's about consent." Judge Sloan's voice stayed calm. "No, it's about intimidation." She looked at the laminated sheet again, then flipped it over. And that's when the room changed, because on the back small print at the bottom was a logo and a website URL. Not a legal citation, not a statute, a brand. Judge Sloan held it up so the camera could catch it. "This says Freedom Paper Solutions, and it has an order number printed in the corner." Kevin's mouth opened and closed. The confidence fell out of his face like someone unplugged it. Mr. Dorsey leaned forward, squinting. "Order number?" Judge Sloan looked at Kevin. "So you didn't create it?" Kevin snapped, desperate. "That doesn't matter." "It matters," Judge Sloan said. "Because now I want to know how many people you've used this on." Kevin's voice rose. "That's not relevant to this case." Judge Sloan leaned back, eyes locked on him. "It becomes relevant when it shows intent. A tool you purchased and used to threaten others. A system." She turned to the clerk. "Clerk, look up that website on the record." Kevin jerked forward. "No. This is harassment." "Sit," Judge Sloan said, and the word landed hard enough that Kevin sat. The clerk typed. The courtroom waited. Even the fluorescent lights felt loud. After a few seconds, the clerk looked up, expression tightening. "Your Honor, it's a storefront. They sell fee schedules, affidavit packets, and lien kits." Judge Sloan didn't blink. "Read the product description." The clerk swallowed and read. "Stop corporations in their tracks. Charge per contact. Enforce with lien filing instructions." Mr. Dorsey let out a breath like he'd been punched. He brought a kit. Kevin's face twisted with pure anger now, but underneath it was panic, because the courtroom wasn't laughing anymore. They were understanding. Judge Sloan looked directly at Kevin. "You didn't come up with a legal theory. You bought a script." Kevin's voice cracked. "It's not a script." Judge Sloan tapped the laminated sheet. "It literally has an order number." Then she leaned in, quieter, sharper. "And if you bought a lien kit, I want to know if you've ever filed one." Kevin froze. "Not the theatrical kind." "The real kind." Judge Sloan watched him carefully, then turned to the clerk. "Run his name through county records. Search for liens filed by Kevin Mark Raines in the last 2 years. Kevin's breathing got loud again. "You can't just," Judge Sloan cut him off without looking at him. "I can. And I am." Because Kevin's whole act depended on one thing, people getting tired and walking away. But Judge Sloan wasn't tired, and something told her the moment those lien records came back, this case was going to stop being about a tow fee and start being about what Kevin had been doing to people who couldn't afford to fight back. Asterisk, the clerk didn't even finish typing before his posture changed. It's a tiny thing, shoulders pulling forward, eyes narrowing, that quiet, "Oh, no," what people get when they find more than they expected. Judge Sloan caught it instantly. "What did you find?" The clerk cleared his throat. "Your Honor, county recorder search shows multiple filings under Kevin Mark Raines. Some are recorded liens. Some are UCC financing statements." Kevin let out a short, bitter laugh, like he was offended by the concept of paperwork tracking him. "That's impossible. I don't file liens." Liens are corporate instruments. Judge Sloan didn't look at him yet. How many? The clerk glanced at the screen again. 6 in the last 18 months. The gallery shifted. Mr. Dorsey's head turned slowly, disbelief turning into something harder. Tessa, still seated off to the side from earlier, stared at Kevin like she'd just watched the mask fall off completely. Judge Sloan finally looked at Kevin. 6. Kevin's face flushed. Those aren't mine. Judge Sloan's tone stayed calm, but the air tightened. Then you'll have no issue with us pulling the certified copies and comparing signatures? Kevin leaned forward, trying to talk fast enough to outrun consequence. Signatures can be forged. Names can be stolen. The system— Stop, Judge Sloan cut in. The system didn't buy a lien kit with an order number. You did. Kevin's jaw worked. He glanced toward Mr. Dorsey like he wanted to reframe the narrative back to towing. Back to a smaller fight. Back to a place where he could still pretend he was the victim. Judge Sloan didn't let him. Clerk, what are the names on those filings? Asterisk, the clerk scrolled, then read carefully. Dorsey Towing LLC UCC-1 filed 3 weeks ago. Also, a lien against a person named Alicia Grant, another against a person named Samuel Tallman, and one against the county clerk's office. The courtroom made a sound low and uncomfortable, like people realizing this wasn't stubbornness. It was retaliation. Mr. Dorsey's voice came out rough. He filed one on my business. Kevin snapped. It's a notice. Judge Sloan's eyes turned to ice. A notice filed with the county recorder is not a notice. Mr. Raines, it's a legal instrument that affects credit, property, and ability to operate. Kevin's voice rose. Only if the corporation chooses to recognize it. Judge Sloan leaned back slightly. Do you hear yourself? You're literally admitting you file these to cause damage. Kevin froze for half a beat, then lunged into denial. No, I filed to protect myself. Judge Sloan didn't argue. She just moved forward. Bailiff, I want a witness from the recorder's office. Now, someone who can authenticate the filings and explain what was recorded and what was rejected. The bailiff nodded and stepped toward the side door. Kevin shot up in his seat. You can't call random witnesses. This is small claims. Judge Sloan's face stayed flat. And you can't escalate a small claims dispute into a county record retaliation campaign. Yet you did. Sit down. Kevin sat, but it wasn't compliance. It was calculation. Mr. Dorsey's hands clenched behind his back. Your Honor, my bank called me about 2 weeks ago. Said there was a filing against my business and asked if I was in a dispute. I didn't even understand what they meant. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed. Your bank called you? Mr. Dorsey nodded. Yes, I've got trucks financed. Insurance lines. That kind of thing. If this stuff gets flagged, it messes with everything. Kevin's face twisted. Then maybe you should have released my car. Judge Sloan turned toward him so slowly it felt like the temperature dropped. There it is. Kevin blinked. What? The truth, Judge Sloan said. You file these because you enjoy the leverage? Because you know most working people don't have time to fight a paperwork fire you started? Kevin tried to smirk, but it didn't stick. I'm within my rights. Judge Sloan didn't respond. She looked toward the door. The side door opened and a woman stepped in carrying a sealed envelope and a thin binder. Not nervous. Just professional. Mid-30s, badge clipped to her belt, hair pulled back. Expression careful, like someone who has learned not to react to the nonsense people bring to government counters. Judge Sloan nodded once. State your name and position. Monica Chen, the woman said. I'm a recording specialist with the county recorder's office. Judge Sloan gestured toward the witness stand. Ms. Chen, I requested certified copies of filings attributed to Kevin Mark Raines. Do you have them? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Chen held up the sealed envelope. These are certified copies with recorder stamps. Kevin's shoulders tightened. Judge Sloan didn't miss it. Ms. Chen, without conclusions, tell me what these filings are. Ms. Chen opened the binder and spoke like someone reading from policy, not emotion. Several of these are UCC-1 financing statements. They list individuals and businesses as debtors unless Mr. Raines or an entity connected to him as the secured party. They're often used in commercial lending, but they're also sometimes misused to harass. Kevin snapped. It's not harassment. Judge Sloan didn't look at him. Miss Chun, were any of these rejected? Miss Chun nodded. 2 were rejected due to improper formatting and missing required information. 4 were recorded because they met basic intake requirements. We do not determine truth of content at intake. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed. So garbage can still get recorded if it looks formatted? Yes. Your Honor, Miss Chun said. Mr. Dorsey exhaled sharply. Like that explanation finally matched the fear he'd been carrying. Judge Sloan turned to Miss Chun. Do any of these filings relate to Dorsey Towing? Miss Chun flipped to a tab and held up a certified copy. Yes, this UCC-1 lists Dorsey Towing LLC as debtor and references a fee schedule breach as the collateral basis. Judge Sloan's gaze sharpened. Fee schedule breach. Kevin lifted his chin. Exactly. Judge Sloan didn't give him the moment. Miss Chun, do you see a signature? Miss Chun pointed. Yes, it's signed Kevin Mark Raines in the secured party section. There's also an email address used to file electronically. Judge Sloan looked at the clerk. Does that email match anything in our file? The clerk typed quickly, then looked up. It matches the email on his prior lawsuit filing. Kevin's face tightened, and for the first time he didn't have a slogan ready. Judge Sloan held the certified copy up toward Kevin. You want to tell me again it's not you? Kevin's voice went hard. People can use my email. Judge Sloan tilted her head slightly. And they can also use your laminated kit, right? Miss Chun continued, careful and factual. In addition, this filing includes a notary acknowledgement page. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed. Notary. Miss Chun nodded. It lists a notary name and commission number. Kevin's throat bobbed. His eyes darted. He was doing the math in his head, how many layers he'd built, and how many were peeling back. Judge Sloan leaned forward. Ms. Chen, do you frequently see legitimate UCC filings against tow yards because someone was mad about a storage bill? Ms. Chen paused, choosing professionalism. No, Your Honor. Judge Sloan looked at Kevin. So you're not just refusing to pay. You're trying to punish. Kevin snapped, voice cracking with outrage and panic mixed together. No one punishes me. I'm protecting my property from unlawful seizure. Judge Sloan's voice stayed calm, but it hit like a blade. Your property was parked in a fire lane. Kevin slammed his palm lightly on the table. Prove it. Mr. Dorsey's face went red. There's a picture. You saw it. Judge Sloan raised her hand. Silence fell instantly. Then she turned back to Miss Chen. The other names you mentioned, Alicia Grant, Samuel Tallman, are those also connected to tow disputes? Miss Chen flipped pages. No, Your Honor. One appears to be a residential address. Another appears to be a small business owner. The gallery went quiet again, but now it wasn't amusement. It was the sick realization that this man didn't just try this on companies. He tried it on whoever he thought couldn't fight back. Judge Sloan's eyes locked on Kevin. How do you know these people? Kevin's mouth opened. Nothing came out. So Judge Sloan asked the question in a way that removed every hiding place. Did you file these to scare them into silence, yes or no? Kevin swallowed hard. I don't answer under corporate coercion. Judge Sloan nodded once, like she'd expected that exact dodge. Ms. Chun, one more thing. Do any of these filings include supporting attachments? Ms. Chun opened a section of the binder and her expression tightened slightly. Yes, several include attachments titled Affidavit of Truth and Notice of Default, the same language used in the defendant's fee schedule packet. Judge Sloan turned toward Kevin. So your kit wasn't for decoration. It was for deployment. Kevin's eyes flicked toward the door and escape math. The bailiff shifted, subtle but firm. Positioning without touching. Judge Sloan leaned back and spoke with a calm that made the room feel smaller. Mr. Raines, this case is no longer just about a tow bill. You used county filings to retaliate. You attempted to use intimidation as leverage. Kevin's voice went sharp. You can't criminalize paperwork. Judge Sloane's eyes didn't blink. You can't weaponize it either. She turned to Miss Chen. Miss Chen, I want those certified copies entered as exhibits. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Sloane looked at the clerk. Add them to the record. Then she looked at Kevin steady, uncheckable. Now we're going to talk about consequences inside this courtroom, and we're going to talk about what gets referred outside of it. Kevin tried one last time to reclaim oxygen. This is a violation of my sovereignty. Judge Sloane cut him off mid-sentence, voice low and final. Your sovereignty ends where other people's lives begin. And the gallery didn't laugh this time, because they could feel the next turn coming sharp. Irreversible. Mr. Dorsey didn't even wait for permission this time. The moment Judge Sloane said the words retaliation and referral, he straightened like his body finally believed it was safe to tell the whole truth. Your Honor, he said, voice rough, can I show you what this did to my business? Judge Sloane nodded once. Yes. Mr. Dorsey reached into his folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper that looked harmless until you saw the logo at the top. A bank letterhead. He held it like it embarrassed him to need it. This came in the mail, he said. My credit line got flagged. I have 2 trucks financed. I have insurance renewals. I've got payroll every Friday. My banker called me like I'd done something wrong. Kevin's eyes flicked to that paper. Just once. But it was the look of a man recognizing a weapon he'd already fired. Judge Sloane held out her hand. The bailiff took the letter and placed it on the bench. Judge Sloane read silently for a few seconds, then her jaw tightened at the corners. She looked up. This letter says your bank placed a temporary hold pending clarification of a UCC filing. Mr. Dorsey nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, I had to spend 2 hours on the phone explaining I didn't borrow money from this guy. I don't even know him besides this toe. Kevin leaned forward, trying to reframe it as some academic debate. A UCC1 is not a lien. It's a financing statement. It's notice. Judge Sloane didn't blink. It's a filing that triggers real-world consequences for real people. Banks don't treat it like poetry, Mr. Raines. She turned to Monica Chen. Miss Chen, when a filing like this is recorded, can it affect someone's credit or banking? Monica nodded carefully. It can raise flags in due diligence checks, yes. Especially if it lists collateral or implies a secured interest. Asterisk. Judge Sloane nodded once and turned back to Kevin. So when you filed it, you knew exactly what you were doing. Kevin's voice rose. I knew what the law allows. No, Judge Sloane said calmly. You knew what fear allows. The gallery went quiet again, but this time it wasn't entertainment. It was that slow dawning disgust people get when they realize the defendant isn't confused, he's calculated. Judge Sloane looked down at the certified copy and tapped the page where Kevin's signature sat. This is filed after the toe. 3 weeks ago. Kevin shrugged like timing didn't matter, because that's when the breach occurred. Judge Sloane looked up. The breach being that you couldn't park in a fire lane and then bully your way out of payment. Kevin opened his mouth, then snapped it shut. He could feel the courtroom turning on him, and he didn't have a slogan strong enough to hold it back. Judge Sloane turned to the clerk. Clerk, I want a statewide UCC search under Kevin Mark Raines. Not just county, state. Kevin's head snapped up. That's outside jurisdiction. Judge Sloane cut him off without looking at him. I'm not prosecuting you, Mr. Raines. I'm documenting you. The clerk typed quickly. The quiet clicking of keys sounded loud in the room. Like a lock being picked, Monica Chen stayed still at the witness stand. Professional and neutral, but even she looked tense now. Like she knew what was coming. Mr. Dorsey exhaled slowly. Hands clasped behind him like he didn't trust them not to shake. Kevin stared at the monitor like he could. Will the search results to be empty? They weren't. The clerk's eyes widened. Your Honor, there are 17 UCC filings under his name in the last 2 years. A low, angry murmur rippled through the gallery. Kevin laughed once, then defensive. 17 is not a lot. Judge Sloane's gaze pinned him. 17 is a pattern. The clerk continued, voice careful. Several list individuals as debtors, not businesses. and several include attachments with similar titles: Affidavit of Truth, Notice of Default, Fee Schedule Breach. Mr. Dorsey whispered, almost to himself. He's been doing this. Judge Sloan nodded slightly. Yes. Then she looked at Kevin, and her voice dropped into that calm, dangerous tone that makes people stop breathing. Mr. Rains, she said, I'm going to ask you something simple. Did you ever actually loan money to any of these people? Kevin's jaw worked. It's not a loan. It's compensation for rights violations. Judge Sloan leaned back. So the answer is no? Kevin flared. I don't answer to answer, Judge Sloan said, sharper. Yes or no? Kevin's eyes darted to the bailiff, then to the door, then back. He didn't answer. Judge Sloan nodded once like she'd received the answer anyway. Miss Chen, if someone files a UCC-1 with false information, is there a remedy? Monica Chen spoke carefully. There are correction statements and termination filings that can be submitted. The affected party can also seek a court order. It depends. Judge Sloan turned toward Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Dorsey, have you had to spend money or time addressing this UCC? Mr. Dorsey nodded. Yes, I called a lawyer for a consult. $200. And I lost a day of work dealing with a bank. Judge Sloan wrote something down. Kevin leaned forward, panic showing through arrogance now. He's lying. He's inflating. Judge Sloan didn't even look at him. You want to talk about inflating? Your fee schedule charges $250 for saying your name. The gallery made a short, bitter sound. Judge Sloan lifted the laminated sheet again, then set it down like it was contaminated. Mr. Rains, if you wanted your vehicle, you had a legal process. Pay the fees. Contest the tow in the proper forum. You chose intimidation instead. Kevin's voice cracked. Because the forum is corrupt. Judge Sloan's eyes didn't blink. And yet you used this courthouse last year when it benefited you? Kevin flinched before he could recover. The side door opened again. Not the bailiff this time. Woman walked in with a small purse clutched tight to her chest and a folder held like a shield. Early 30s, hair pulled back, eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. She didn't look like she belonged in Kevin's world of laminated threats. She looked like someone who'd been hit by paperwork she didn't understand. Monica Chen turned slightly surprised. That's Alicia Grant. Kevin's head snapped toward her so fast his chair squeaked. And the moment their eyes met, his face went pale in a way no ideology could cover. Judge Sloan's gaze sharpened. Miss Grant, why are you here? Alicia's voice shook, but she held herself upright. I was in the hallway for my own case. I heard my name. Judge Sloan didn't soften her authority, but her tone became more careful. Miss Grant, did you have dealings with Mr. Rains? Alicia swallowed. Yes, he rented a room from my mother. He stopped paying. When we gave him a notice to vacate, he filed something on me. She looked to Monica Chen like she needed a translator for the nightmare. Monica nodded once, almost apologetic. A UCC filing. Alicia's eyes filled. My bank called me too. I was trying to refinance. They said there was a secured interest against me and asked if I was being sued. I'm a preschool teacher. I don't even know what that means. I had to pay a lawyer $900 to clear it. The gallery went completely still. Kevin tried to interrupt, voice sharp. She's lying. That's unrelated. Judge Sloan's eyes cut to him. If you speak while she's testifying again, you will be held in contempt. Sit down. Kevin's mouth snapped shut. Judge Sloan looked at Alicia. Ms. Grant, do you have proof? Alicia opened her folder with shaking hands and pulled out a stamped document. This is what the lawyer filed to terminate it. And this is the email where he told me he'd destroy my credit if I didn't rebut his affidavit. Judge Sloan held out her hand. The bailiff took the papers, placed them on the bench. Judge Sloan read the email line once, then again slow. Then she looked at Kevin. Not with shock, with recognition. So you don't just file these against businesses? Judge Sloan said quietly. You file them against individuals. People with jobs and families who don't have time or money to fight you. Kevin's eyes flashed. They wronged me. Judge Sloan's voice stayed calm. They held you accountable. Alicia's voice broke. He showed up at my mom's house filming. He told my little brother to tell the truth on camera. My brother's 16. He was scared. Judge Sloan's expression tightened. That's coercion. Kevin leaned forward, desperate now. This is a smear campaign? Judge Sloan didn't blink. No, it's a pattern in ink. She turned to the clerk. Print the statewide filing list and attach the certified copies entered today. Then she looked at Monica Chun. Miss Chun, I want you to provide the recorder's office contact pathway for removing fraudulent filings. Monica nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Sloan faced Kevin again. Mr. Raines, you will pay the tow and storage fees, and you will be ordered to file termination statements for any UCC filings related to this dispute immediately. Kevin's voice rose, panicked. You can't order that. Judge Sloan leaned forward, eyes cold. Watch me. The courtroom held its breath again, not because of drama, but because the next step was obvious. This wasn't going to end with a simple judgment. This was going to end with a referral, and Kevin could feel it. Asterisk. Judge Sloan didn't speak for a moment. She just watched Kevin the way you watch someone who keeps stepping backward toward a cliff they refuse to believe is there. The clerk finished printing the statewide list and handed the pages to the bailiff. The bailiff passed them up. Judge Sloan took the stack and flipped through it slowly, not because she needed time to read, because she wanted Kevin to feel every second of it. Kevin tried to fill the silence anyway. This is harassment. You're turning a tow dispute into a witch hunt? Judge Sloan didn't look up. No, you turned a tow dispute into a filing campaign. She kept flipping. Names, dates, attachments, repeat phrases. The same affidavit of truth language like a copy-paste fingerprint. Mr. Dorsey stood perfectly still, jaw tight. Alicia sat with both hands around her folder like it was keeping her upright. Then Judge Sloan stopped turning pages. Not dramatically. Not for show. Just stopped. Her eyes locked on one line as if it had pulled the air out of the room. The gallery felt it. You could feel it when a judge finds something that changes the direction of the entire day. Judge Sloan lifted her eyes to the clerk. Confirm this entry? The clerk leaned forward, then nodded slowly. Yes, Your Honor, it's in the database. Kevin's voice cracked, sharp with nervousness he tried to disguise as anger. Confirm what? Judge Sloan didn't answer him yet. She turned the page so the camera could see the entry, then read it aloud, clear, controlled. Debtor Rebecca Sloan. A wave of stunned silence went through the room. Kevin's face went pale so fast it looked unreal. Asterisk. Alicia's mouth opened slightly. Mr. Dorsey blinked like he thought he misheard. Even Monica Chun's professional mask tightened at the corners. Judge Sloan didn't react emotionally. That made it worse. She simply continued, voice flat. Filed 8 months ago. UCC 1 financing statement. Attachment. Notice of default and fee schedule breach. Kevin's lips moved without sound. Judge Sloan looked directly at him. Did you file a UCC document listing me as a debtor? Kevin swallowed hard. No. Judge Sloan nodded once. That's your second lie today. Kevin leaned forward, desperate. That's not what it looks like. Someone used your name. People do that all the time. Judge Sloan's tone stayed clinical. Same email address. Same filing method. Same attachment titles. Same language. Same footprint. Kevin's breathing turned loud and uneven. His eyes darted to the bailiff, then the door, then back to the bench like he could find a loophole in someone else's face. Judge Sloan didn't let him run the room. For the record, she said, this entry will be copied and forwarded to the presiding judge for appropriate handling. I'm not going to pretend I didn't see it, and I'm not going to entertain your sovereign routine as an excuse. Kevin snapped weakly. So now you're personally offended. Judge Sloan's eyes narrowed. I'm professionally alarmed. There's a difference. She set the statewide list down and finally spoke to the people Kevin had been trying to exhaust into surrender. Mr. Dorsey, she said, you towed a vehicle from a fire lane under proper authorization. You documented it. You notified him. He refused to pay. He then retaliated by filing a UCC statement against your business. Mr. Dorsey's throat worked. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Sloan nodded. Judgment for Mr. Dorsey in the amount of $1,860. Kevin's head snapped up. Objection denied, Judge Sloan said instantly. And you will also reimburse Mr. Dorsey for the $200. Legal consult and any documented bank or administrative fees directly tied to clearing the fraudulent filing. Mr. Dorsey let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for weeks. Judge Sloan continued without pause. Miss Grant. Alicia looked up, eyes glassy. You are not a party to the tow dispute, Judge Sloan said, but you are a witness to pattern and harm. Your documentation will be attached to the referral packet. Alicia's voice cracked. Thank you. Kevin leaned forward, voice rising into panic. This is not criminal court. You can't. Judge Sloan cut him off clean. I can do what judges do when they see potential fraud and harassment. I can refer it. She turned slightly toward Monica Chen. Miss Chen. Your testimony confirms that fraudulent filings can be recorded at intake and still cause damage, correct? Yes. Your Honor, Monica said carefully. Judge Sloan looked at Kevin again. Which means your favorite excuse, it's just paper, is nonsense. It's paper that impacts credit, financing, housing, and safety. Kevin's voice thinned. I didn't hurt anyone. Alicia's eyes flashed. She spoke before she could stop herself. You hurt my mother. You hurt me. I was shaking at my kitchen table, thinking I'd never get a home loan because of you. The gallery went still again. Because it wasn't courtroom drama anymore, it was real fear spilling out of a person who didn't deserve it. Judge Sloan nodded at Alicia gently. That matters. Then she turned back to Kevin, and her tone turned absolute. Mr. Raines, here are the orders of this court. 1. You will pay the judgment of $1,860 plus additional costs to be calculated by the clerk upon proof. 2. Are ordered to file termination statements for the UCC filing against Dorsey, Towing LLC within 10 days, and to provide proof of filing to this court. 3. You are ordered to cease and desist from contacting Mr. Dorsey, his employees, or Ms. Grant directly or indirectly, except through lawful payment communication. No packets, no threats, no filming. 4. This court is issuing a referral packet containing your admitted refusal to pay, the audio recording of your threats, the laminated kit evidence, the certified recorder copies, the statewide list, and the thumb drive contents. Kevin's face twisted. Referral to who? Judge Sloan didn't blink. To the district attorney's office for review of fraudulent filing activity, and to the Consumer Protection Unit. And yes, because of the entry bearing my name to the presiding judge. Kevin's shoulders started shaking. Not remorse. More like rage colliding with reality. You're ruining my life, he whispered. Judge Sloan's voice stayed calm. No, you used paperwork to try to ruin other people's lives. You just weren't careful enough to keep your trail clean. Kevin tried one last time to bargain soft voice. Fake humility, the sudden switch people make when they realize anger doesn't work anymore. Judge. I'll fix it, he said quickly. I'll terminate everything. I'll pay. We don't need to. Judge Sloan cut him off, sharp. You had that option the first time someone asked you to do the right thing. Then she leaned forward, eyes locked, and the courtroom felt the final nail being driven in. You're not confused, she said. You're practiced. You bought a kit. You used it. You filed. You threatened. You did it enough times that you forgot one day someone would refuse to be intimidated. Kevin's jaw clenched. He looked toward the bailiff again, like he expected sympathy. The bailiff gave none. Judge Sloan turned to the clerk. Note for the record, the thumb drive remains secured as evidence. Copies to be provided upon lawful request. Then she looked at Mr. Dorsey. Mr. Dorsey, keep your documentation. If he files anything further, you bring it back immediately. Mr. Dorsey nodded, voice quiet. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Sloan looked at Alicia once more, her tone softer now. Ms. Grant, you did the right thing by speaking up. People like him count on silence. Alicia wiped her cheek, nodding. Ashamed she was crying and relieved she finally could, Kevin stood frozen. Eyes hollow now, like he'd run out of slogans and discovered. There's nothing underneath them except consequences. Judge Sloan sat her, pen down again, same controlled motion as the beginning, only now it felt like a door. Closing. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Once. Clean. Final. Kevin didn't move at first. He stared at the table like he expected it to offer him a loophole. It didn't. The bailiff stepped closer. Sir, you need to leave. Kevin stood slowly, shoulders tight. And for the first time all day, he didn't look like a sovereign anything. He looked like what he'd been all along. A man who tried to scare working people with paperwork and finally met someone who wasn't scared.